Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where you'll hear ridiculous stories about people who think the world revolves around them, and that nobody else matters. Guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and you guys know the deal. You're about to hear some more super entitled stories, so sit back, relax, because we're diving in. Oh, and hit that subscribe button for future stories, my friends. Let's dive in. I was at the pool with my aunt and 4 of my little cousins. At this said pool, there's a big pool, a medium-sized pool, and a baby pool, all in ground. My aunt was in the baby pool with my 2 baby cousins, and my 2 other cousins were in the medium pool. I was alone in the big pool swimming around. Now, this pool has a rule that any child under a certain height cannot be in the big pool area, even under the guidance of an adult. So there was some toddler who was running around the pool edge, and then he tripped on some sunglasses by the side of the pool, and then he fell in. Now, I was the only one who saw him, so I quickly swam over and picked up the flailing, crying child out of the water. He was sobbing, but I calmed him down and he said, "Thank you." He seemed like a super sweet kid. I wondered where the heck his parents were and why he was left alone in the pool area, which he shouldn't even be in. Now, I asked him where his mom was, and he showed me a lady who was tanning in the pool chair, not even paying attention to her kid at all. Now, I told her what happened, and the conversation followed, and she said, "He fell in?" I told her, "Yeah, but I saved him. He's okay. Why is he even..." Now, she then cut me off and said, "Well, why did you take him out of the pool?" I told her because he was gonna drown. Kids his size can't even be in this pool. The mother then tells me, "He's trying to learn how to swim. This would have been a great learning opportunity, and you messed it up." I told her, well, if I didn't do anything, he would have drowned. Why weren't you watching him? He would have been fine if it wasn't for you. He was just playing in the pool. I then told her, well, kids his age can't even be in this part of the pool. What are you talking about? I paid to be here. He can go wherever he wants. Now, there were signs everywhere saying the rule of height and children, and apparently entitled people can't read. I then point to one of the rule signs, and she says, "Well, I never saw that. It isn't my fault. These lousy lifeguards should have told me the rule." So I then reported her to the lifeguard, and she was escorted out of the pool for harassment and neglect of her child, I guess. I then just went to the medium pool and chilled with my cousins. Other than that, my day was rather fun. Have a nice day, ladies. The Mom of the Year award definitely goes to this lady. So listen guys, scrolling through the comments, a lot of people learned how to swim because their parents threw them into the deep end and let them fend for themselves, which is an absolutely terrifying way of learning how to swim. I love this person's comment right here. "I'm a lifeguard and I can't tell you how many parents literally instigate near-death experiences as learning opportunities for their kids. If we don't do our jobs, it'll become a learning opportunity for the parents." Ain't that the truth, my friends? Ain't that the truth? So in college, I had a randomly assigned roommate that I did not get along with at all. Our personalities were just on 2 opposite ends of the personality spectrum, and we clashed. The only things we had in common were that we went to the same college and lived in the same apartment. That's it. Anyways, it was a nightmare living situation. The apartment had 4 rooms and 2 bathrooms. She and I shared the same bathrooms as our rooms were next to each other. We had 2 roommates on the other half of the apartment that we both got along with. So after over 8 months of just pure passive aggressiveness towards each other, like putting sticky notes on her dishes, and she would put my wet laundry on the floor, she decided to report me to the apartment management for bullying her. Honestly, we were doing it to each other. However, the apartment management took pity on her because she claimed that I physically intimidated her, and that she was scared to live with me. She did this because she wanted to move to a new apartment without paying a $500 fee, but instead the apartment issued a written warning. So, the warning stated that we were to not touch each other's personal belongings without written permission. The first infraction was a $250 fine, the second infraction was a $500 fine, and the third infraction would result in eviction. I was so scared walking out of the office because I could not afford those fines, and she had the biggest smile on her face. I knew that she would immediately report me, so I went back to the apartment and she left for work. I was mortified, and then I realized that she made a huge mistake. So everything communal in the apartment belonged to me, and she was a super moocher. I told my other roommates what happened and they were shocked. I asked if I could use their bathroom temporarily, and they said, of course. So I immediately emptied out everything that was mine in our shared bathroom. The shower curtain, toilet paper, rug, towels, soap, etc. I then grabbed my magnetic whiteboard and listed out everything in the kitchen that belonged to me. Plates, cups, mugs, pots, pans, silverware, coffee maker, toaster, pot holder, towels, literally listed every single item, and said that she was not allowed to use any of it without my written permission. I also drew some eyes to remind her that everybody was watching. I popped that whiteboard on the fridge and went to my room to do some homework. Later, she came home from work and had a meltdown. She screamed. Not any words, just a blood-curdling scream. In the following couple of days, her father came to the apartment to threaten me that they were getting a lawyer after she bought her first roll of toilet paper and plastic shower curtain, but apparently it was too much for her to handle. She went back to the main office to report my bullying once again, and was instead told that she could either deal with it or pay $500 to move to a new apartment. She moved out 7 days after the warning was issued. So, little things you need to know. I'm a 26-year-old female with a curvy body type, and I have a huge vertical scar just below my sternum to my navel. I was given the scar because I needed emergency surgery. My life was at risk and there was no other way. Anyways, long story short, I could have died that night, and my scar is my battle wound. I am quite proud of it. It shows that I've survived, and I think it's sexy. It's also been 2 years since the surgery, and the scar has healed nicely. It's not as nasty looking and will fade more in time. So now back to the main reason of the post. I went to visit family a couple of days ago, since the restrictions in my area aren't as bad anymore. Well, my aunt's house has a pool in the backyard, and I was wearing a bikini. Now, it was a tasteful and not overly revealing bikini, but of course it showed off my scar, which I didn't think was an issue. Now, everybody there was having a good time when my second cousin Melanie comes over. She points a finger at my stomach and gestured in a vertical sense, clearly referring to my scar. She then made a face and said, "Can you cover up, please? Your scar is triggering me, and it's not okay for my children to see that because it represents violence." Now, I'm just standing there with my other cousin Shannon, both of us wide-eyed over her phrase. I'm sorry, what violence does my scar represent? So I asked her how it was triggering her, and she full-on says, so your scar is just ruining the atmosphere and my child won't stop asking me questions about it. Like, not everything has to be about you. Now, I told her I was sorry it made her uncomfortable, but she and her kids didn't have to look at the scar, and I wasn't gonna cover up because I wasn't ashamed of my body. She then huffed at me like the big bad wolf, who was never invited in the first place, and yells at me in front of the family saying, "I asked you politely to cover up your ugly scar. Don't you understand how rude you're being to me? I told you your scar triggers me, and you should just try for once to not think about yourself. You're obviously trying to be the center of attention at my family's pool party by flaunting your accident to everybody. We all know you only had that surgery to get reactions from people." Now, she then storms off like a toddler would. I went back to hanging out with our family, and everybody just laughed her behavior off. She was being a brat, no surprise there. And I get it, my scar isn't pleasant to look at, but my aunt was in a string thong bikini showing off her giant C-section scar, and Melanie did not say anything about that. But because my scar did not bring life to the world, she thinks it's okay to complain about it. Okay, Karen. Now, I did brush it off, but every time Melanie had to walk past me, she would say, "Ew, ew, ew, ew," over and over, so everybody could hear her tantrum. Finally, I had enough when I heard her loudly explain to her kids that mommy's cousin loves to fake illness for attention. Okay, for that, I pulled her aside and flat out ripped into her, in front of everybody and her kids. And I said, "You know what, Melanie? Grow up. You're 37 years old, and you're not only being a bully, but you're also being a complete dick. You are clearly ruining this get-together for your own personal gain, and I'm sick of your BS. Either grow up and get over the fact that people have lives that don't involve you, or get out and leave. Nobody wants you here anyways." So she then starts to fake cry. It was so obviously fake that it hurt. And she boo-hooed about how mean I am, and how this could have all been avoided if I hadn't shown up in the first place. So later on when I was leaving, her daughter walked up to me and said, "Mommy told me she wished you hadn't survived the surgery because you ruined her life today." Like, wow. Most of my family agrees that she's crossed a line, but say that I shouldn't have snapped at her so publicly. Guys, OP's cousin definitely sounds super entitled, and was probably jealous of the fact that OP had a scar that was getting attention. Honestly though, if she didn't want to get called out publicly, she shouldn't have called out OP publicly. OP definitely did nothing wrong here, and the other people at the party should be embarrassed. that they didn't call her out for her behavior sooner. Listen, OP should have shut her down by saying, "When you cover up that stupid, ugly personality, I will cover up my scar." So I work in customer support for a mobile network provider. The way our company works is that after training, you enter a 1-month testing period, where you answer phone calls under close supervision. So at the end of the testing period, they either let you go or transfer you to a permanent position on one of the teams. Now, I was a few days away from the end of the testing period when I get one heck of a phone call. I spent more than an hour on that one, and it hurt my final score at the end of the month. The customer told a tall tale about how she was trying to pay her debt to the company, and how the sales rep was rude to her and refused to let her pay, so she took a picture of him and left. So the reason the call took so long is because she kept telling the story out of order. She kept adding and changing details and going on tangents and rants. It was very difficult to get the story straight. I felt like a detective, trying to piece together the clues into what actually happened. Every time I read the story back to her, she added or changed something in the middle and then went on a tangent about how she's a polite British woman, and we shouldn't hire people like that to represent our company. Eventually, I got her to settle down on a version of what happened. I looked through the records and saw that according to the representative, who was a lot more concise than her, that she was the one being rude, yelling at him in English, a language he barely spoke, and taking pictures of him without his consent. Now, I did not tell her that. I just politely instructed her on how to pay her debt via the phone. Now, I told her that until the debt is paid, I cannot make changes in the account, including adding a report. So, reluctantly, she gave me her credit card details, and the debt was paid in full. I reported on what she told me and moved it along to my superiors. So a few days after my testing period was over, and despite the tragedy of a call, I aced it and got transferred to the illustrious email department, which is what I wanted. It's much more chill here, and I can work at my own pace, not having to rely on customer or the supervisor to work faster. Also, I could take my breaks whenever I felt like it. Everything is fine for a couple of weeks until I receive a new email telling me a familiar tale. Now, it was a recounting of the same story that I had heard on the phone, except much more elaborate with much more details that I had never heard before, such as the involvement of another person, or that the representative assaulted the customer by trying to impede her exit from the store. The customer complained that she's been cheated and expected the representative to be fired, and that she was entitled to compensation, but she saw him again at the store and was outraged. She was under the impression that paying her debt meant that we will listen to her and fire the representative. The email ends with the following demands. 1. You shall fire that representative. 2. That she's entitled to us reimbursing her for the money that we stole from her under false pretenses. 3. We must apologize to her in the form of extra compensation and a personal phone call from a high-ranking manager. So she then added that if we didn't do this, the police will get involved. Now, I had enough of her games and decided that I won't do any of this, so I decided to get the police involved. You see, while reading the email, I noticed that the address she emailed us from had a different surname than her account or the credit card information she provided. And lo and behold, the email was actually her real name, while the other details were fake. So it turns out that she was indeed a polite British woman. A British woman overstaying her visa for over a year and was now using a fake identity in Israel. As we discovered later, she was also wanted for numerous accounts of fraud where she didn't pay for services or claim compensation for stories that later turned out to be false, just like she tried to do with us. We called the police, but they couldn't find her since the physical address she registered on our site was also fake. So we called her back to the store to apologize personally. She gladly obliged, and the police were waiting for her. Neither I nor the representative she implicated were there that day, unfortunately, so we didn't get to see the look on her face. She was fined a hefty amount, and then deported back to the UK. My friends, I bet she wasn't expecting that. Like, if you were in a country and overstaying your visit, the last thing you want to do is to draw attention. Especially if you're overstaying your visit and committing fraud. Her entitled mentality literally got her deported, unless that was her master plan. It'd be so funny if she couldn't afford a plane ticket back, and that was her last resort, getting deported back to the UK. But probably not. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /Entitled People. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories today, do hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode of our /Entitled People, I will link it right here. Karen ruins OP's 10th birthday party by mocking her dead mother. Oh my goodness gracious. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.